So, Brandon, in your book from 15 through 23, where did the title come from?
Well, I started writing lyrics after my best friend Ryan moved from New Hampshire, where I was living, down to Florida, and he came up with a song called The Outsider, which is the first lyric in my book, which is a compilation of 160 plus lyrics that I wrote from the time I was 15 through the time I was 23, almost 24. And he came to me and asked if I could finish the lyric that he was starting. I wrote the last two verses, and I felt empowered. It was a good outlet for me to get out things that I was going through and to overcome struggles that I was dealing with. And I just kept writing after that, and I haven't written a lot of lyrics in the past couple of years, but after revising the lyrics in my book, I came up with some new ideas, expressing where I've come since then. And I wrote those lyrics at the end of my 23rd year, and then I published my book, hence the title.
When you started writing, what did you find was the hardest part?
The hardest part anytime I go to write a new song is what I want to write exactly, the message I want to get across, and what struggles I have overcome. And that's normally what I write my lyrics about, is something that I have gone through that has inspired me to teach a lesson to other people. So maybe when they read the lyrics, they might have their own struggle to overcome, or they might overcome their own struggles that they're going through.
Where does most of your inspiration come from?
Most of my inspiration comes from my vision problem, which is recessive bilateral optic atrophy, which I learned about the time that I started writing lyrics when I was 15, that I would never be able to get my driver's license. And any of my old friends in New Hampshire that learned about that kind of had to deal with it, and they didn't know how to respond to that. And anyone that I've met in Florida has had their own kind of difficulty understanding and dealing with that. And usually my inspiration comes from that type of response.
Which song that you have written are you most proud of or you like best?
I really like my lyrics around the time I wrote the song Decide, which my band Remedy actually wrote music to, and we actually performed it live several times. There's one song, Fabric, that was written around that time. Also, before that, Day by Day is one of my favorite lyrics that I wrote. Also, One is a song I wrote, which I heard a lot of bands that I like write a song called One, and I always aspired to write a song that had the same title. And I actually put the lyrics to an acoustic song that Ryan wrote in a band or a project that we called Roanoke when I lived down here. Also, I like the song Super Sight that I wrote, the lyrics to that, and we performed that in a band called Remedy, and Circadium before that. We had music written to that.
Now you say that you have all these bands that you have used these lyrics in. Have you used your lyrics in all your bands? I mean, how many bands have you used your actual lyrics in, or have you written songs for?
Okay, well, originally, me and Ryan got in a band in New Hampshire called Affirmative Action. We didn't have any lyrics to any of those songs. After that, I was in a band called My Own Faith, which was also instrumental, up in New Hampshire. After that, I was in a band called Jerk with me and my friend Adam. He wrote the lyrics to that project. I helped with a few, but basically they weren't anything serious. It was basically satire work about some of our friends up there It was a joking aspect that Adam put towards it. Thank you, Adam. And after that, I moved down here, and we added some of my lyrics to the band that me and Ryan put back together with the bassist Shannon Brennan. The band was called The Last 24, and nearly all of those lyrics are mine. Some of them had some verses written by Ryan. You can find all of those pieces in my book. After that, we put together the band Circadium, which some of my songs were used, and some of Travis's songs were used. He was the lead singer. After that, I put together Remedy, which we used a lot of my lyrics. Some of the lyrics were solely Ryan's, and some of the songs, or some of the verses, were written by Josh Lacombe. After that, I was in Undone Perfection. Ryan was also in that band, but none of my lyrics were used, and none of his lyrics were used. After that, I was in Backline Rush. None of my lyrics were used, but the music progressed further. And after that, I've done several projects since Slow Motion Killers, which Maria wrote all those lyrics, and Paradise Ave, which none of my lyrics were used. That was all Greg. And currently I'm in a project with George Cornish, and we're writing the music. I'm helping writing some of the lyrics, and those I might publish in the future.
Now, along with you writing lyrics to some of these songs, you're also an accomplished drummer. What actually inspired you to actually pick up and start playing the drum set?
Well, it's a funny story actually, because as I was friends with Ryan up in New Hampshire, he started introducing me to these songs that he listened to, which were in the rock genre. Now, I used to be pretty comfortable with the music that my parents introduced me to when I was younger, and I started listening to the radio and got introduced to bands like Fastball, Smash Mouth, stuff like that. And then Ryan came along and he was listening to Creed, Three Doors Down, Disturbed, and Drowning Pool. And I started listening to that music, and then one day on the way to school, because my mom used to drive me and Ryan to school in 2002, and he got this idea. He's like, oh, I always wanted to start a band. And not knowing anything about it, I was like, well, what does it take? And he said, well, we need a drum set. And I'm like, okay, how much does one of those cost? And he had no idea. So I started looking it up on eBay, and I found a Century drum set. And once it got delivered to my parents' house in Danville, I started putting it together by hand, not even knowing what a drum key was. I used a wrench, and I didn't even know what each drum was called. I thought the toms were called snares, and I thought the snare was a tom. So after that, I just started hitting stuff, and I got used to the sounds that each would make, and I got used to my own tuning that I liked on the drum set, and I listened to songs by artists I like, Audio Slave, Nirvana, Three Doors Down, and I got accustomed to those beats on the drums, and I started imitating those and coming up with my own. And the guitarists that I worked with, each song that they wrote, I would write my own drum part to, and I wouldn't just go with a pretty much stereotypical drum beat that, say, AC/DC would write. It's the same beat, the one kick drum hit and the one snare drum hit with several hi-hats in between. I would kind of work with it and make something up that would sound cool and also work with the song. And ever since then, I've progressed with my music and been progressing still as a musician. I think that's the most important thing as a musician to learn, is there's always something that you can aspire to write. There's always going to be somebody that's better than you, and you're always going to be better than other people with some experience. So it's important not to be too too much engulfed in how good you've came with your music, and it's also good to not be so down in the dumps and not have any inspiration, and just settle on the talent that you've acquired. And thank you for listening to the second episode of my YouTube channel. And thank you, Elizabeth, for interviewing me.
You're welcome.